Jiho wiped the sweat from his forehead as he moved another crate of medical supplies into the storage bay. Trading Post Epsilon was always hot, the environmental controls struggling to keep up with the desert planet's twin suns. He had been working for 3 hours straight and his back was starting to hurt. Jiho, come to the command center now. The voice crackled through his communicator. It was Commander Taeyang and he sounded worried. Jiho dropped what he was doing and ran. The command center was on the other side of the station, and by the time he got there, he was breathing hard. Inside, he found Taeyang standing next to Hana, the station's medical officer. They were both staring at a screen showing a damaged ship floating in space. What's happening? Jiho asked. Distress call, Hana said without looking away from the screen. That's a Kralix warship. They were attacked by pirates. The ship is falling apart. Jiho felt his stomach drop. Everyone knew about the Kralix. They were one of the most dangerous species in the galaxy. 8 feet tall, covered in dark scales with claws that could cut through metal. They were predators, the kind that hunted and killed without mercy. Most species kept their distance from the Kralix. Are we responding? Jiho asked. No, Taeyang said firmly. The ship is too damaged. We don't have the equipment to help them. And even if we did, approaching a wounded Kralix is suicide. We have to try, Hana said. Her voice was calm but determined. They're dying out there. They're Kralix, Taeyang said. If we get close, they might attack us. Wounded predators are the most dangerous. I'm going, Hana said. She turned and walked toward the door. Taeyang cursed under his breath. Fine, but I'm sending security with you. And Jiho, you go too. Someone needs to handle the cargo if we're bringing survivors back. 20 minutes later, Jiho found himself on a small rescue shuttle heading toward the damaged Kralix ship. His hands were shaking. He had never been this close to a Kralix before. He had only seen them in videos and they always looked terrifying. When they docked with the warship, the first thing Jiho noticed was the smell. It was a mix of blood, burned metal, and something wild like a predator's den. The lights were flickering and there were claw marks on the walls. Stay behind me, the security officer said, raising his weapon. They moved through the ship carefully. Most of it was destroyed. Then they heard it, a low rumbling sound that made Jiho's skin crawl. It was a growl, deep and threatening. They found him in what looked like a sleeping area. The Kralix warrior was lying on the floor, covered in wounds. His dark scales were torn, and green blood pooled beneath him. But his eyes were open and they were fixed on the humans with pure rage. Don't move, Hana whispered. She slowly put down her medical bag and raised her hands to show she wasn't a threat. The Kralix growled again, louder this time. Then Jiho saw them. 3 small shapes huddled in the corner behind the warrior. They were Kralix children, but much smaller, about the size of large dogs. Their scales were lighter, almost gray, and their eyes were wide with fear. He has offspring with him, Jiho said quietly. The warrior tried to stand up, but he was too weak. He collapsed back down, but his body was still positioned between the humans and his children. Even dying, he was protecting them. I need to treat him, Hana said. But if I get close, he'll attack me. We should sedate him, the security officer suggested. No, Hana said. If we sedate him and he dies, those children will be alone and terrified. We need him conscious. She took a step forward. The warrior's growl became a roar, and one of the children started making a high-pitched hissing sound. Hana stopped. Jiho, she said. I need you to distract the children. Keep them calm while I work. How am I supposed to do that? Jiho asked, his voice shaking. I don't know, but we're running out of time. Jiho took a deep breath. He walked slowly around the warrior, giving him plenty of space. The Kralix's eyes followed him, but he was too weak to move. Jiho sat down on the floor about 10 feet from the children. They all pressed closer together, hissing at him. He didn't look directly at them. He had read somewhere that staring at predators made them feel challenged. Instead, he pulled out his ration bar from his pocket and started eating it. He tried to look relaxed even though his heart was pounding. Minutes passed. Hana was working on the warrior, injecting him with medicine and sealing his wounds. The warrior was watching her, but he was getting weaker. Jiho kept eating slowly, breaking small pieces off his ration bar. Then the smallest child moved. It was so slight that Jiho almost didn't notice. The little Kralix took one step forward, then another. Its nose was twitching, sniffing the air. It was curious about the food. Jiho broke off a small piece of the ration bar and held it out, not looking at the child. He kept his hand low and open. The little Kralix moved closer. Jiho could hear its breathing, quick and nervous. Then he felt something wet and warm touch his hand. The child was sniffing his palm. Slowly, very slowly, Jiho turned his head. The little Kralix was right next to him. Its eyes were still scared, but there was something else there too. Curiosity. Trust, maybe. Jiho raised his other hand and gently touched the top of the child's head. The scales were surprisingly warm and smooth. The little Kralix didn't pull away. Instead, it made a soft chirping sound. Behind them, the warrior made a noise. It wasn't a growl this time. It was something different. Something Jiho didn't understand. Hana looked up from her work, her eyes wide. "Jiho," she said. "Don't move." The warrior was looking at Jiho and his child. The other two children had moved closer too, no longer hissing. The warrior's eyes met Jiho's and something passed between them. The warrior raised one clawed hand and made a gesture, pressing his palm to his chest and then extending it toward Jiho. "What does that mean?" Jiho whispered. Hana's face had gone pale. I think he just gave you his children." The warrior's eyes closed. His breathing became shallow. Hana worked faster, but they both knew he was fading. The three children moved closer to Jiho, pressing against him. The smallest one climbed into his lap. Jiho wrapped his arms around it and it stopped shaking. "We need to get him to the station," Hana said. "Now." They loaded the warrior onto a stretcher. The children didn't want to leave Jiho's side. They followed him onto the shuttle, staying so close they were almost stepping on his feet. As the shuttle pulled away from the damaged warship, Jiho looked down at the three small predators surrounding him. What had he just gotten himself into? The medical bay was chaos when they arrived. Hana and her team rushed the wounded Kralix warrior into surgery, while Jiho stood in the hallway with three frightened predator children pressed against his legs. Other station workers stared at them with wide eyes, backing away slowly. Commander Taiyang came running down the corridor, followed by a woman Jiho recognized as Yuna, the station's xenopsychologist. Taiyang stopped several feet away, his hand moving instinctively toward his weapon. "Jiho, step away from them," Taiyang ordered. "I can't," Jiho said. "They'll panic if I move," it was true. Every time Jiho shifted his weight, the children pressed closer to him. The smallest one had wrapped its tail around his ankle. The largest one, which Jiho had started thinking of as the eldest, was making a low rumbling sound in its chest. Not quite a growl, but a warning. Yuna moved forward slowly, her eyes studying the children. "This is remarkable," she said softly. "Kralix juveniles are extremely aggressive. They should be attacking each other by now, establishing dominance. But they're calm." "They're scared," Jiho said. "Yes, but they're not violent. That's what's remarkable." Yuna crouched down, still keeping her distance. "Commander, we need to let this continue. Whatever is happening here, it's working." "They're predators," Taiyang said. "One wrong move and they could kill him." "Maybe," Yuna admitted. "But look at them. They've chosen him as their protector. Breaking that bond now would be traumatic." The middle child made a chirping sound and looked up at Jiho. Its eyes were large and golden, still filled with fear, but also something else. Hope, perhaps. Jiho reached down and touched its head gently. The child leaned into his hand. "How long until the surgery is done?" Taiyang asked. "Hours," Yuna said. "The warrior is badly injured, and even if he survives, he'll need days to recover. So what do we do with them until then?" Taiyang gestured at the children. "We care for them," Jiho heard himself say. "What else can we do?" Taiyang looked like he wanted to argue, but then he sighed. "Fine. But you're staying in the observation room where we can monitor you. And if anything goes wrong, I know," Jiho said. "You'll sedate them." They moved to a large observation room normally used for studying alien specimens. It had soft padding on the floor and walls, probably to prevent injuries. Jiho sat down and the three children immediately climbed onto him. The smallest one curled up in his lap. The middle one pressed against his side. The eldest sat in front of him, watching the door like a guard. Yuna stayed outside the room, watching through the reinforced glass window. Other station personnel started gathering too, watching the impossible scene. A human sitting peacefully with three Kralix juveniles. "They must be hungry," Yuna said through the intercom. "I'll have someone bring food." 20 minutes later, Suman arrived. She was the station's chef. a practical woman who could make a decent meal out of almost anything. She carried a tray of different foods, raw meat, protein cubes, even some fruit. I wasn't sure what they'd eat, she said, sliding the tray through a small opening in the door. So I brought options. The children's heads all turned toward the food. Their noses twitched, but none of them moved. They looked at Jiho instead. I think they're waiting for permission, Yuna said, sounding amazed. Jiho picked up a piece of the raw meat. It was cold and slightly bloody, and he tried not to think about what it was. He held it out to the smallest child. The little one sniffed it carefully, then took it from his hand with surprising gentleness. It ate quickly, making small, satisfied sounds. Jiho fed each of them the same way. They could have easily taken the food themselves, but they waited for him to offer each piece. The eldest child even brought pieces to the other two, sharing without fighting. This shouldn't be possible, Yuna said. She had called in Do-hyun, a child development specialist. They were both watching intently. Kralix juveniles are supposed to fight over food. It's instinct. Maybe their instincts are different around him, Do-hyun suggested. Humans have a unique neurological response to caring for young. Any young, even from other species. You're saying they can sense that? Yuna asked, maybe not consciously. But on some level, yes. Humans evolved as cooperative breeders. We raise children together as communities. Our brains are wired to respond to infant cues, big eyes, small features, helpless behavior. It triggers protective and nurturing instincts. But these aren't human children, Taeyang said. He had been listening from the back of the room. Doesn't matter, Do-hyun said. The instinct is cross-species. It's why humans domesticated wolves thousands of years ago. It's why we keep pets, raise orphaned animals, even care for plants. We bond with living things that need care. Inside the room, the smallest child had fallen asleep in Jiho's lap. Its small chest rose and fell peacefully. The other two were grooming each other, running their claws gently through their scales. The hours passed slowly. Jiho's legs went numb, but he didn't move. He couldn't risk waking the children or making them feel unsafe. Station personnel kept coming to watch, including several alien species. Most of them looked shocked. Some looked disturbed. Late in the evening, a new figure arrived. She was Kralix, but different from the warrior. She wore formal robes instead of armor, and she was older, her scales darker and scarred. Her eyes were sharp and intelligent. I am Representative Vexra, she announced. I came as soon as I heard a Kralix warrior was injured on this station. Taeyang stepped forward. The warrior is in surgery. He should survive. And his offspring? Vexra's eyes found the observation window. She walked over slowly, then froze when she saw what was inside. Jiho was reading something on a data pad, trying to stay awake. The smallest child was still asleep in his lap. The middle one had its head resting on his shoulder. The eldest was curled up next to him, one eye open and watchful. Vexra pressed her clawed hand against the glass. Her expression was unreadable. How long have they been like this? She asked quietly. 6 hours, Yuna said. 6 hours. Together. Peacefully. Vexra's voice cracked slightly. Do you understand what you're seeing? Kralix juveniles cannot stay calm for 6 hours. Not with each other. Not even with their parents. They're too aggressive, too territorial. They're calm with him, Do-hyun said. Vexra turned to look at the humans. Yes, they are. She was silent for a long moment. In all my years, I have never seen this. Even our own younglings fight us. We must dominate them constantly or they become uncontrollable. But this human, he's not dominating them. He's just being gentle. That's what humans do, Do-hyun said simply. At that moment, Hana emerged from the surgery. She looked exhausted but relieved. He's alive. The surgery went well. He should wake up in a few hours. Vexra took a deep breath. I need to see him when he wakes, and I need to understand what happened here today. So do we all, Taeyang said. Inside the observation room, Jiho had finally dozed off, his head tilted back against the padded wall. The 3 children were arranged around him like guards, protecting the human who had protected them. Through the glass, Vexra watched them, and tears, rare for any Kralix, formed in her ancient eyes. You've given them something we can't, she whispered. You've made them feel safe. In the medical bay, the warrior's eyes slowly opened. His first word was a name spoken in the Kralix language. A word that meant little ones, his children, and somewhere in the observation room, wrapped in the gentle arms of a human who barely understood what he'd done, 3 small predators slept without fear for the first time in their lives. The warrior woke with a roar that shook the medical bay. Machines beeped frantically as he tried to sit up, his claws tearing through the medical sheets. Hana jumped back and security guards rushed in with weapons ready. "My offspring," the warrior bellowed in heavily accented standard. "Where are my offspring?" "They're safe," Hana said quickly, raising her hands. "Please, you need to rest. Your wounds, take me to them, now." There was no arguing with that tone. Even wounded, the Kralix warrior was terrifying. They brought him to the observation room in a wheelchair, though he fought against it the whole way. When he saw through the window, he stopped struggling immediately. Inside, Jiho was sitting cross-legged on the floor, showing the children how to stack blocks. The smallest one was chittering with excitement every time the tower got taller. The middle one was trying to copy Jiho's movements. The eldest was watching carefully, learning. "They've been playing for an hour," Yuna said softly. "We've never documented Kralix juveniles playing peacefully before." The warrior stared. His fierce expression slowly softened into something that looked like wonder. "I don't understand," he said. "They should be fighting. They should be attacking each other. That's what our young do." "Not with him," Vexra said. She had stayed at the station, refusing to leave until she understood what was happening. "Warrior Vrathar, what you're seeing is something new. Something we Kralix have never experienced." Vrathar looked at her, then back at his children. "How is this possible?" "We're trying to understand that ourselves," Do-hyun said. He had prepared a presentation, pulling together research from across human history. "May I show you something?" They moved to a conference room. Vrathar refused to go far from his offspring, so they used a room with a window view into the observation area. The warrior kept glancing over his shoulder every few seconds to check on them. Do-hyun pulled up images on a screen. "This is a human child," he said, showing a baby. "And this is a wolf pup. 10,000 years ago, humans and wolves were competitors. We hunted the same prey. We should have been enemies. But you weren't," Vexra said, understanding dawning. "No, because human children take a very long time to grow, at least 18 years before they're fully independent. During that time, they need constant care. Humans evolved to be patient, gentle, and protective of anything small and helpless." Another image appeared, a human child hugging a dog. "We didn't just domesticate wolves. We formed a bond with them. They became part of our families. And over thousands of years, we did this with many species. Cats, horses, birds, even animals that could harm us." "You bond with predators," Vrathar said slowly. "We bond with anything that needs care," Do-hyun corrected. "It's in our nature. When we see something young and vulnerable, our brains release chemicals that make us want to protect it. Feed it. Keep it safe." Seok, an evolutionary biologist who had arrived that morning, stepped forward. "There's another factor. Human children are weak for a very long time. They can't run fast. They can't fight. They can't even survive on their own for years. So humans had to become experts at gentle handling." He pulled up more images. Most predator species have young that become independent quickly, weeks or months at most. Their parents don't need patience. They need dominance to control aggressive offspring. But humans needed something different. We needed to keep our children safe without hurting them. And that instinct works on our young, Vrathar said, watching through the window as Jiho carefully helped the smallest child climb onto a cushion. "Why?" "Because your children are young," Hana said simply. "To a human, anything young triggers those protective instincts. Doesn't matter if it's a human baby or a Kralix juvenile. The instinct is the same." Vexra stood and walked to the window. Inside, the middle child had brought Jiho a shiny piece of metal it had found somewhere. The child was offering it like a gift. Jiho accepted it with exaggerated gratitude, making the child chirp happily. "We're broken," Vexra said quietly. "My species. We've always known it, but we never spoke of it openly." Everyone turned to look at her. She didn't look away from the window. "Thousands of years ago, we nearly went extinct," she continued. "Our offspring were so aggressive that they killed each other. Parents killed weak children to save resources for strong ones. Only 1 in 5 juveniles survived to adulthood." Vrathar nodded slowly. "I learned this in history. The time of culling. Yes, we survived by becoming stricter, harsher. We built social structures based on dominance and control. It worked, we survived, but we lost something too." Vexra's voice was heavy with old pain. We lost the ability to simply be gentle with our young. Inside the room, Jiho was now reading to the children from a datapad. They couldn't understand the language, but they were listening intently to his voice. The smallest one was fighting sleep, its eyes drooping. Your people have something we don't, Vexra said to the humans. You can look at a child, any child, and just love it without fear, without aggression. You can be soft. Softness isn't weakness, Hana said. No, Vexra agreed. We're learning that now. She turned to face them fully. I want to propose something that will sound insane to both our peoples. But I've been thinking about it since I arrived. What? Taeyang asked cautiously. A program, an exchange. Human caretakers working with Kralix families, helping us with our young during their most dangerous years, from birth to age 3 in galactic standard terms. The room erupted in protests, human voices mixed with Vrathar's growl of disapproval. You want to give our offspring to aliens? Vrathar demanded. You already did, Vexra pointed out. And look at the result. Everyone fell silent. Through the window they could see that all 3 children had finally fallen asleep, piled on and around Jiho. The human was asleep too, one hand resting protectively on the smallest child. I'm not saying replace parents, Vexra said. I'm saying supplement them. Let humans teach us how to be gentle, how to make our children feel safe instead of threatened, how to play instead of fight. This would change everything, Yuna said, for both our species. Yes, Vexra said. It would. Vrathar was quiet for a long time. He watched his offspring sleep peacefully, something he'd never seen before. Usually they woke each other up with fights. Usually he had to keep them separated at night. If we do this, he said finally, my family will be first. I won't ask others to do what I'm not willing to try. You're sure? Vexra asked. I gave my offspring to that human because I was dying, Vrathar said. I thought they would need protection and I could not provide it. But he protected them better than I ever have. Not through strength. Through kindness. He looked at Vexra. Maybe it's time we learned to be kind too. The meeting continued for hours. They discussed details, safety protocols, training programs. Ambassador Krill, an insectoid diplomat, recorded everything. This was history being made. But the most important thing was happening in the observation room. 3 small predators were learning that not everything in the universe wanted to hurt them. That sometimes, safety didn't come from strength or dominance. Sometimes it came from a gentle touch and a soft voice. And in that moment, the galaxy began to change. 6 months had passed since that day at Trading Post Epsilon. The small observation room had become famous across the galaxy. Videos of Jiho with the 3 Kralix children had been viewed billions of times. Some species called it miraculous, others called it dangerous. But no one could deny the results. The Kralix juveniles, now officially named Skrull, Vesh, and Kira by their father, had grown. They were bigger now, their scales darker and their claws sharper. But they hadn't grown more violent. If anything, they were gentler than before. Jiho stood in the landing bay of the Kralix Dominion's capital ship, waiting. He was nervous. Today was important. Today, the matriarch herself was coming to evaluate the program. Hana stood next to him. She had been working non-stop for months, developing medical protocols for cross-species childcare. Relax, she said. You've done this 100 times now. Not with the matriarch watching, Jiho replied. The ship doors opened and matriarch Vexra entered. She was ancient, her scales almost black with age. Beside her walked Vrathar, now fully healed and wearing formal armor. Behind them came 5 other Kralix families, all with small children. The children saw Jiho and immediately pulled away from their parents, running toward him. Their parents started to grab them back, but Vexra raised a hand to stop them. Jiho knelt down as the children surrounded him. They were all making excited chirping sounds, touching his hands and face with surprising gentleness. Even the ones he'd never met before seemed to recognize him as safe. Remarkable, one of the Kralix parents breathed. My daughter never approaches strangers without aggression. Hana stepped forward with her team. They had 12 human caretakers now, all specially trained. If you'll follow us, we'll begin the orientation. The next few hours were carefully structured. Each human caretaker was paired with a Kralix family. They observed how the parents interacted with their children, and the parents observed how the humans did the same. The differences were striking. When a Kralix child misbehaved, the parents would growl and show dominance, The child would submit, but with fear in its eyes. When a human caretaker redirected bad behavior, they used soft words and distraction. The child would stop, but without fear. It's not that your methods are wrong, Do-hyun explained to the parents. He was teaching a class on child development. For your species, dominance hierarchies are natural. But there might be another way, a gentler way that still teaches boundaries. One of the parents, a female named Scartha, raised her clawed hand. But if we don't dominate them, how will they learn respect? Respect and fear are different things, Do-hyun said. He showed a video of Jiho with Kira. The little Kralix had knocked over a tower of blocks in frustration. Instead of scolding her, Jiho had sat down, rebuilt the tower, and shown her how to do it carefully. Kira had watched intently, then tried again with more patience. He didn't punish her, Do-hyun said, but she learned anyway. She learned because she wanted to please him, not because she feared him. Scartha looked troubled. I was raised with dominance. My parents were raised with dominance. How can we change thousands of years of tradition? Slowly, Hana said. One family at a time. One moment at a time. That evening there was a formal ceremony. Matriarch Vexra stood before the gathered humans and Kralix, her presence commanding despite her age. I have lived many years, she began. I have seen wars. I have seen peace. I have seen my people struggle to survive in a galaxy that fears us. We are strong. We are fierce. But we are also lonely. The room was silent. No one had ever heard a Kralix speak like this. We isolated ourselves because we believed strength meant standing alone. Our children grew up learning to fight, to dominate, to never show weakness. And yes, we survived. But at what cost? She turned to look at the human caretakers. These beings are not the strongest in the galaxy. They are not the fastest or the most aggressive. By our old standards, they should be weak. But I have watched them for 6 months now. I have seen what they can do. Vexra walked over to where Jiho sat with Skrull, Vesh, and Kira. The 3 juveniles were grooming each other, content and calm. They taught our children something we could not, Vexra said. They taught them peace. They taught them that being gentle doesn't mean being weak, that caring for others is a strength, not a weakness. She placed a clawed hand on Jiho's shoulder. The human looked up at her and she saw no fear in his eyes, only respect. The Human Kralix Childcare Initiative is hereby officially approved, Vexra announced. Any family who wishes to participate may do so. We will learn from the humans and perhaps teach them some things as well. Cheers erupted from both species, but Vexra raised her hand for silence. She wasn't done. There is something else, she said. I have been contacted by 3 other predator species. The Vortax, the Raytheons, and the Skrull. They all have similar problems with their young. High aggression, high mortality rates. They want to know if humans would help them too. The humans looked at each other in shock. This was bigger than anyone had imagined. We need to train more caretakers, Hana said. Develop more protocols. This isn't something we can rush. No, Vexra agreed. But it is something we must do. Because what you've started here is more than a childcare program. It's a bridge between species that have never trusted each other before. Silk stood up. He had been researching continuously, trying to understand the full scope of what was happening. The implications are enormous. If human caretakers can help multiple predator species raise healthier, less aggressive offspring, we could change the entire social structure of the galaxy. We could also endanger humans, Taeyang pointed out. He had been skeptical from the beginning, though the results had slowly won him over. What happens when a Vortax child, which is even more aggressive than a Kralix, hurts or kills a human caretaker? Then we learn from it, Jiho said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. We develop better safety measures, better training, but we don't stop trying. Why? Taeyang asked. Why risk human lives for alien children? Jiho looked down at Kira, who had fallen asleep against his leg. Because they're children, and children deserve to feel safe, no matter what species they are. Rothar, who had been silent throughout the ceremony, finally spoke. I was raised to believe that showing emotion was weakness, that loving your offspring too openly would make them soft. His voice was rough with feeling, but I watched my children with this human. I saw them happy for the first time. Truly happy, not just obedient, and I realized that I was taught wrong. He looked at the other Kralix parents. Our ancestors did what they had to do to survive the time of culling. But the culling is over. We don't have to raise our children in fear anymore. We can choose something better. Scartha, The skeptical parent from earlier stepped forward with her young daughter. "May I?" she asked Jiho hesitantly. Jiho nodded. Scartha sat down next to him and her daughter immediately went to explore the blocks scattered around. Instead of hovering and correcting every mistake, Scartha just watched. When her daughter succeeded in stacking 3 blocks, Scartha made a soft, encouraging sound. The little Kralix looked up at her mother in surprise. Then she chirped happily and hugged her mother's leg. Scartha's eyes widened. Then she carefully wrapped her arms around her daughter, holding her gently. Scartha's voice broke. "She's never let me hold her like this before." "Because she wasn't afraid," Hana said softly. "You weren't dominating her. You were just being her mother." Around the room, other Kralix parents were watching. Some looked skeptical. Some looked hopeful. But all of them were thinking, considering, wondering if maybe, just maybe, there was a better way. That night, as Jiho returned to his quarters, he found a message waiting. It was from Ambassador Krill, who had been documenting everything. "History will remember this day," the message said, "not as the day humans became caretakers to predator species, but as the day the predators learned they didn't have to be predators to their own children." Jiho thought about that. Then he thought about tomorrow, when they would start expanding the program. More families, more species, more children who deserved a chance to grow up without fear. It was going to be hard work, maybe dangerous work. But looking at the image on his datapad, Skrull, Vesh, and Kira sleeping peacefully together, he knew it was worth it. The galaxy was changing, one gentle touch at a time. 5 years had changed everything. Nari stood at the viewport of the transport ship, watching the Vortax homeworld grow larger in the window. She was nervous, more nervous than she'd ever been in her life. The Vortax were even more dangerous than the Kralix, bigger, stronger, and much more territorial. And today was her first assignment with them. "You'll do fine," said a deep voice behind her. Nari turned to see Skrull, now a young adult Kralix. He stood over 7 feet tall, his scales a deep metallic gray, but his eyes were kind, something that still surprised people who met him for the first time. Predators weren't supposed to have kind eyes. "I hope so," Nari said. "I've trained for 2 years, but training isn't the same as reality." "I know," Skrull said. He moved to stand beside her at the viewport. "I was there at the beginning, remember? When Jiho didn't know what he was doing. When no one had any training. If he could figure it out, so can you." Beside him, his siblings Vesh and Kira nodded. They were part of the program now, serving as ambassadors and trainers. They helped new human caretakers understand predator behavior, and they helped predator families understand what to expect from humans. "Tell me again how it felt," Nari asked. "When Jiho first took care of you?" Kira, the smallest of the 3, spoke up. She was the most talkative. "I remember being scared. Our ship was destroyed. Our father was dying. Everything smelled wrong. And then there was this human, and he just sat down. He didn't try to dominate us. He didn't show aggression. He just existed near us, and somehow that was enough." "It was the food," Vesh added. "He fed us by hand. No one had ever done that before. Usually food was thrown to us and we had to fight for it. But most of all," Skrull said, "it was the way he touched us. Gentle, like we were valuable, like he cared if we got hurt." He looked at Nari. "That's what you need to remember. The Vortax cubs you'll be caring for have never experienced that. They've only known dominance and competition. When you show them gentleness, it will confuse them at first, but then it will change them." The ship landed on a platform outside a large Vortex settlement. The architecture was all hard angles and dark metal, built for strength rather than beauty. As they disembarked, Nari saw her first Vortex in person. He was massive, at least 9 feet tall, covered in thick armor-like scales. His forearms ended in claws that could tear through steel. His eyes were deep red, and when he saw the humans, he growled low in his throat. "I am Kroth," he said in heavily accented standard. "You are the human caretaker?" "Yes," Nari said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'm Nari, and these?" Kroth gestured at the 3 Kralix. "We're here to support her," Skrull said, stepping forward without fear, "and to show you what the program did for us." Kroth studied them carefully. "I have heard the stories." Kralix young made soft by human hands. "Not soft," Vesh corrected, "strong, but strong in different ways." Before Kroth could respond, a smaller Vortex emerged from the building. She was still large by human standards, but her scales were a lighter shade and her eyes were anxious rather than aggressive. "This is Raka," Croth said. "My mate. And these—" He gestured, and 3 small forms emerged from behind Raka. The Vortax cubs were about the size of large dogs, with scales so dark they were almost black. Their eyes were already red like their father's, and when they saw the strangers, all 3 dropped into aggressive postures, hissing and showing their claws. Nari's training kicked in. She didn't react to the threat display. Instead, she slowly sat down on the platform, making herself smaller and less threatening. She pulled out a ration bar and started eating it, not looking at the cubs. "What is she doing?" Croth demanded. "Watch," Kira said. Minutes passed. The cubs stayed aggressive, but they were curious too. One of them, slightly larger than the others, took a cautious step forward. Then another. Nari broke off a piece of her ration bar and set it on the ground between them. The cub sniffed the air. Its siblings hissed a warning, but it ignored them. It crept forward and snatched the food, then retreated quickly, but it didn't leave. It stayed close, watching Nari with intelligent eyes. "She's already making progress," Skrull observed. Raka made a sound that might have been a sob. "They're always so aggressive, always fighting each other. I can barely keep them from hurting each other. And now this stranger sits down and one of them approaches without violence? It's what humans do," Vesh said gently. Over the next few hours, Nari worked with the cubs. She never forced interaction. She just existed in their space, calm and non-threatening. She fed them small pieces of food. She made soft sounds. And slowly, gradually, they began to relax. By evening, the largest cub was sitting next to her. Not touching, but close. The other 2 were still wary, but they'd stopped hissing. Croth and Raka watched in amazement. "I don't understand," Croth said. "We are Vortax. We are warriors. We are supposed to be strong." "You are strong," Nari said. "But strength doesn't mean your children have to be afraid all the time." "Afraid?" Raka's voice was sharp. "They're not afraid. They're aggressive because that's their nature." "With respect," Skrull said, "we thought the same thing about Kralix young. But we were wrong. They weren't being aggressive because they wanted to. They were aggressive because they were scared. Because they didn't feel safe." He moved closer to the cubs. All 3 immediately tensed, but they didn't attack. Skrull sat down next to Nari and the largest cub watched him intently. "I was like them once," Skrull said. "Always fighting. Always defensive. I thought that's what it meant to be Kralix. But Jiho showed me something different. He showed me that I could be strong without being aggressive. That I could trust without being dominated. And now?" Croth asked. "Now I work with the program. I help other species understand what humans did for us." Skrull looked at his siblings. "We all do. Because we want other children to have what we had, a chance to grow up without fear." That night, Nari stayed in a guest room near the Vortax family quarters. She could hear the cubs making sounds, not aggressive anymore, but curious. Confused, maybe. They didn't understand why this strange creature was so different from everything they'd known. The next morning, she found the largest cub waiting outside her door. It had brought her a gift, a shiny piece of metal, probably stolen from somewhere. Nari accepted it with exaggerated gratitude, and the cub made a pleased rumbling sound. Progress. Days turned into weeks. The cubs grew more comfortable with Nari. They started playing instead of fighting. They learned to share food. They even began grooming each other gently instead of using their claws to establish dominance. Raka watched it all with tears in her red eyes. "I thought there was something wrong with me," she admitted to Nari one day. "Because I wanted to be gentle with them. Because I wanted to hold them without fear. But our culture says that's weakness." "It's not weakness," Nari said. "It's love." Word of the success spread. More Vortax families requested human caretakers. The program expanded to the Raytheons, then the Skrell. Each species had their own challenges, their own fears. But the pattern was always the same. Human caretakers brought gentleness. Children responded with trust. Families learned new ways of being together. 3 months into her assignment, Nari received a message. It was from Jiho, now the director of the entire cross-species youth development program. "You're doing amazing work," his message said, "but I need you to come back to headquarters. There's someone I want you to meet." When Nari arrived at the program headquarters, a massive facility that had been built specifically for this purpose, she found Jiho in the main hall. He was surrounded by children, Kralix, Vortax, Rathian, Skrell, and others, all playing together, supervised by human caretakers and their own parents working together. 5 years ago, this would have been impossible, Jiho said. These species have been enemies for centuries. Their young would tear each other apart on sight. What changed? Nari asked, though she knew the answer. Humans changed them, or maybe we just showed them what they could be. Jiho gestured to the children. They're not afraid of each other anymore, because they learned as young children that different doesn't mean dangerous. A figure emerged from the crowd. It was Vrethar, older now and wearing formal diplomatic robes. Beside him was matriarch Vexra, ancient but still strong. Today is important, Vexra announced. Today the Galactic Council votes on a proposal that would make cross-species youth development a universal right, that would station human caretakers across the galaxy, that would teach all species what the predators learned, that strength can be gentle. Will it pass? Nari asked. Yes, Vrethar said with certainty, because every species that participated in the program has seen the results. Juvenile mortality rates down by 60%, aggression down by 70%. But more than that, he paused, emotion making his voice rough. Happiness. Our children are happy. That was never a goal before. Survival, yes. Strength, yes. But happiness? That was a human concept. That evening they gathered to watch the council vote. Representatives from hundreds of species all debating the proposal. The predator species spoke in favor, sharing their experiences. Some peaceful species spoke against it, worried about the safety of human caretakers. But in the end, the vote was clear, passed by overwhelming majority. Human caretakers.